that to run in our vehicles. So we have a couple of vehicles and a tractor that are diesel vehicles that then run on that recycled vegetable oil. If you're interested in that later on this afternoon or over lunch, I could give you a little tour of how the engine works with vegetable oil. This is an example of a swale on our farm. We've started putting in swales, and a swale is a really popular thing in permaculture because it does so many different functions. A swale is it's an uncompacted ditch made on contour. So if this is, it's kind of hard to tell on this picture, but this is the high point of this hill here, and it's sloping down. And so this is the contour on the hill. So we marked out the contour. Actually, I'm gonna reach on. This is what that hill looks like, and so a swale is along the contour like this. It's dug out, so it's a ditch that you dig down, and then you deposit that soil down the slope like that. And then you fill in all of this area with organic matter. So it's in a way it's kind of similar to that banana circle concept, but on a different scale, because this will wrap around the hill, around the slope on the contour. So what happens is any kind of rainfall that falls on here and starts to run off the slope, run down the slope, settles into this. This is like a water catchment. And then rather than continuing to run down the slope, it soaks in to this area and creates a water storage area high up on the slope. So there's a lot of potential for swales here on this property because most of the buildings it's a real advantage that the buildings are built high up on this elevated area, and then it has a lot of good gentle slope going down away from the buildings. So you could have a number of swales spaced out at convenient distance for planting fruit trees.
What's a good spacing for fruit trees?
Fruit trees, I would say, depending whether they're dwarf or standard, what size they are. But I would say, like, we have swales that are about 30 feet apart for standard fruit trees.
Okay.
So you planted trees in between them?
Yeah. So here you could plant some shrubs and things on this berm that you're creating to stabilize this soil so it doesn't erode.
What did you call the hill?
Berm.
A berm?
A berm, or the whole thing is a swale, so I would just call it a swale. So then you're creating this water storage here, so then you could plant your fruit tree directly on the downhill side of that swale. So as the water comes in here, this is just a passive irrigation system. So this soil here is going to pretty much always be saturated, so the trees won't have any water limitations or water stress.
Can you point to that picture there and show us where you're planting your fruit tree?
We just made this swale this spring, so we haven't actually planted the fruit trees yet.
Where you would
But
plant
we
it?
will plant fruit trees in between these two swales.
Okay.
So right along the bottom, the downhill side. This is the next swale. There will be more going down the hill further.
So is that like a 5-foot swale from the?
Yeah, this is about the ditch part of the swale is about 3 or 4 feet wide.
Okay.
It's about 2 feet deep. And this was right after we had finished this swale. We haven't actually filled in this area with mulch yet, and we got a nice rain. It's raining here, and you can see all of the rainwater pooling up in there just like it's supposed to. It's a beautiful thing.
So would you still recommend mulch underneath the trees after you plant them, or wood chips to prevent weed? Like if you're just doing straight up fruit trees?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So mulch.
I would combine this,
Yeah.
I would combine this with the previous slide when we were looking at the food forest.
Yeah,
growth.
so put some food, yeah.
So you're still gonna have all of those multiple layers
Mhm.
growing, but you're gonna, in addition, you're gonna have this swale as an earthwork that's gonna provide irrigation. So you've got the irrigation, and then you've got the multi-story, the polyculture of plants there that are all complementing each other, and then you've got this to provide irrigation.
Would you say that you, by doing this, you could not, you don't have to have an irrigation system?
Right.
For sure, like, because a lot of people are like, well, if I'm gonna invest in this, you know, I wanna get an irrigation system, which is so expensive, you know? But with a swale, that would, like during the drought like we had this year.
Yeah. We planted grapes along the top of this. And we're planning to also plant some trees and shrubs, trees on the bottom side, some shrubs on it, and then have grapes growing along the top of the berm, because grapes like a little bit drier conditions. And they all 10 of them survived this year without any irrigation. I would definitely say in an area like this, where you have really nice soils, like soil is heavy, it's got good clay content, it's got a good organic matter, I would not think you would need to irrigate. You know, if you plant like bare root trees and shrubs and things in the spring while they're dormant, and then they get off to a good start in the spring, I think they'd be fine. If you're planting potted plants in the spring or later, you're probably going to want to water them until they get established, and then I think they'd be fine.
Is the concept to have it be like a closed thing, or is it open on the inlet, the water? In other words, is it all on the same grade, same level, or does the water kind of flow down?
There's no flow. Water should not flow in a swale because it's all on contour. So when water falls into the swale or gets collected into the swale, it stops and it spreads out, but it doesn't flow to one direction or another. Then you would call that a drain. If you're intentionally directing water, say you wanted to have a pond over here, then you'd be collecting water off of the upper slope and directing it into the pond. But that's not what swales do. Swales are just to collect it and let it sink in, stop it from flowing.
So your first swale coming down the hill is gonna, I guess, collect most water, won't it? Because it won't have the most surface area above it. And then your next swale down is gonna get less and progressively, is that correct? Or do they all, how does that?
Well, they all have
Does it
a
all
pretty
even
good
out or
catchment
what?
size. I mean, the top swale, this is kind of like the top of the hill. So it gets about this, maybe 30 or 40 feet. And then this gets another 30 feet, and this gets another 30 feet.
Okay.
So
So
they
it's all
actually
about the
get
same surface
wider,
area,
they get
okay.
wider as well as it goes down. So the top, like if you were looking at this from the top, you know, like the first swale is only about that wide, and the second one is, they're kind of like getting larger like that as well. But if you do have a situation where, like one of the things, our house is actually situated at the same level as the top swale. So we're planning on having a rainwater collection barrel and then having the overflow from the barrel go into the swale. So there's a possibility that if we got a really heavy rain, you know, the water from the house and the water running off the land would fill this up. So then you'd want to have a spillway somewhere on your swale. So if the whole swale completely filled up with water, it wouldn't cause erosion. It would just gently spill over the top. And you want to put, you know, special gravel and really fibrous rooted grasses there and things. So when the water did spill over that, it wouldn't cause erosion, and then it would just gently feed down into your next swale. I could see that being, you know, that's definitely something you would do in a situation like this where you have really large buildings that would be potentially feeding down into a series of swales. You'd want to have the water. You could use that to your advantage too. I mean, this would all be part of your design, is that if the top swale is going to get more water than the third swale, you'd plant different plant communities there. You
Mhm.
might plant, you know, cranberries and things that are water loving, and then drier loving plants in the
We-
lower swales.
When you say spillway, how much space would you do to make a spillway? Like, let's say, you have 300 feet across. You know, would you wanna do it all like a swell of 300 feet? Or would you wanna like, in what section should you have spillways? And, you know, like if it was.
Mhm. Usually the spillway on I mean, swales can be of all different sizes depending on what you're trying to do. But most spillways are a couple meters, you know, wide. And so you make that part of the swale a little bit lower than the rest of the swale. So as the water gets up to that level, it overflows out of that before it starts to potentially erode or compromise another part of the swale.
Okay.
But, yeah, your swales will be bigger, you'll do deeper, larger swales in more humid climates where you're getting a lot more rain, so they have a larger volume, you know, holding capacity. So you take all of that into account, and there are specific ways, like when you get into earthworks and dam building and constructing swales to actually calculate out how much water you're gonna get into this and how much spillway you need to have a safe overflow of water. So that would be the kind of thing we'd get into more if we were doing an extended course.
Gotcha.
Another principle is always thinking of using biological resources first. You know, that should be your first thought of how can I accomplish something, rather than immediately looking at, you know, using your tractor or using your lawnmower or using whatever, you know, power tools or fossil fuels that you have. Letting nature do the work. This is a picture of a chicken tractor, which is just a portable chicken coop that you can keep chickens in, or other animals. You can do a similar sort of thing with pigs or with intensive grazing, but chickens are really good for small areas. We have a chicken tractor that's 3 feet wide, so it fits right over the top of our vegetable beds, and so you can move it along every day, move it a little bit, and then you let the chickens scratch up and eat all the weeds for you and deposit their manure and, you know, do all of the soil preparation for you. So then you just come in behind them and plant and mulch, and your garden is away and going.
So the chickens aren't free range, they're in a coop, but not, they're not in a specific area, you just keep moving them on.
Yeah,
Interesting.
free-range chickens are really destructive. Free-range chickens will get into everything you don't want them to get into.
This
They'll eat
controls
everything.
where they go, what they eat.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great way to give them a really nutritious diet, getting them out on the pasture, living out on the pasture, eating all of these insects and weeds and plants and things, but to not require you to fence them out of all of your other gardens and things.
It's amazing how deep they can dig very quickly and down plants and just get everything.
So would you wanna do it in the spring before you plant?
Yeah, or you can do it, you know, if you're like growing a spring crop, you know, and your spring crop is done, before you plant like a fall crop of vegetables, you can run your chickens through it, you know, clean everything up and scratch it up and get ready to go. We also, we have on our farm, our small farm, we've designed it so we have about a ½ acre of vegetables in between our perennial food forests. So just to give you an idea, it's there's a gentle slope to the east on our property. So if this is our property gently sloping off to the east like this, we have 10 small food forests where we've started planting shrubs and fruit trees and nitrogen fixing trees, and then in between there we have 10 gardens. So our farm looks kind of like this, where we have patches of places where we plant annual vegetables, in between patches where we have fruit trees. And that's to intentionally make it more diverse and allow us to rotate different crops between our gardens. So we have 10 small gardens that are 40 feet by 40 feet. So maybe about the size of like half of this room. And so we'll grow, in every year, we'll grow a different family of plants in each of those. So if this year we're planting like nightshades here, like tomatoes, the next year we would plant a different family like garlic, or, you know, a different rotation. But in our rotation, there's two years in the rotation where we put portable electric fencing on our gardens, and we'll let pigs 1 year and chickens 1 year live on the garden and grow on the garden, so they'll completely cultivate the soil for us and eat all of the weeds and eat all of the, we actually grow a cover crop for them. So in the spring, we'll plant oats or barley and peas, and we'll let that get about half grown up in July, and then we'll put the animals in and they'll eat all of that crop for us. And then the next year we start over the rotation. So that's in every 10 years we have 2 years where there are animals on our garden, and they do all of the heavy work for us and add a lot of fertility as well to our gardens.
How big are those annual gardens?
They're 40 feet by 40 feet. And each one of them has 8 beds. So they're kind of laid out like this with 8 garden beds in them like that, each of the beds are about 3 feet wide, 40 feet long.
How many people do you have working, you know, this farm or whatever?
Well, we need a lot more people. Right now it's like 1.5 or 2 people, maybe, because it's mostly my wife and myself, and we have our daughter is almost 2 years old, so she's not quite to the point where she's doing too much garden work, but we do have a lot of help from volunteers, and that's part of our vision, is that we're doing a lot of things, just getting things set up right now, doing things like swales and establishing the gardens and getting our perennials planted. But we want to have workshops and have volunteers come out and do more work out there with us, and hopefully have like an apprenticeship program or something like that, so we have people living out there.
Like a CSA maybe?
Maybe, yeah. We're thinking more of farm to school is probably something that we'd be more interested in. At this point, we're just growing food for our own use and to trade with other farms. But we'd like to have a way that we can give our surplus food away or sell it at a pretty low price. We don't want to put a lot of time into marketing.
So I want to make sure I have this straight. Okay, you've got the food forest on the left there in the diagram, and then in the middle where it's kind of squishy looking, that's where the animals are. And then start over again. So the food forest is where the food is, and then you've got the animals, and then you've got the food forest in the end. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing. It is, but it's a way that, another way to think of it is, it's called alley cropping, is where you have you'll have an alley like here. Here's an area where we have perennials, primarily perennials planted, fruit trees, berries, shrubs, and then, yeah, those are about 40 feet wide, the areas where we have the food forest, and then there's a 40-foot section where we plant annuals, and then another, we either plant annuals, so that it's a 10-year rotation, so every year there's, every 5 years there will be animals on it for 1 year, and then 4 years in between when we'll have vegetables growing on it, and then another year with a different kind of animal, and then 4 more years of vegetables.
And then how many, would you say, how many animals per area? Like, you know, like, if you just did chickens, how many chickens per square foot or per acre, kind of like?
I don't really know what the,
Just whatever you see.
we got 30 chickens this year, so
Okay.
that's how many we have right now, but I think you could have more chickens
Yeah.
on that size of a garden,
Okay.
but that's just what
So-
we decided to get this year.
30 for 40 by 40 feet, or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's like, 160 square feet, so for 30 chickens, that's a pretty big area per chicken. And we have 3 pigs right now, which are very happy living on the garden. Value diversity in everything, so polyculture guilds that work harmoniously together, using rotations, but also planting a lot of diversity together at one time. So like we were saying with guilds before, you're taking advantage of different growing space above ground and below ground. And it's also very important for pest control. So if you have healthy soil that's making your plants grow healthy, and you're growing a diverse crop, you really don't need to rotate this way. I mean, crop rotations are more important for if you're growing like a whole garden of one thing, then the next year you really have to rotate to a different family. But if you're growing like 6 different families all in one bed, like we were all in one garden, we were growing more than 6 families in our front yard before, there really isn't any way to rotate when you're growing everything integrated like that. And that's even better for maintaining soil fertility and minimizing pests and diseases.
John,
Yes.
what is the lower, the right picture?
This one? That's a mixture of grains and a seed mixture that getting ready to be seeded out. That includes grains, legumes. So these are peas. These are I think wheat, and then there's some little bitty grains of like clover. So a mixture of seed, a seed mix being thrown out to start a pasture area. Using the edge, valuing the edge, that's a really good permaculture principle. The way to guide your system is creating systems like this that have a lot of edge, that have a lot of boundaries. So maximizing the number of boundaries that you have between different parts of your systems, making your system very heterogeneous. Instead of having a monoculture of one thing, instead of having this half of our farm be all annual vegetables and this half be all orchard, maximizing the edge, breaking up everything into diverse habitats is a great way to increase your productivity and because when you're growing, the edge here is actually this area right here. So you're going a little bit into the garden and a little bit into the food forest, and that's the area that you're going to have the greatest of like diversity and the most productivity, because you're going to have beneficial insects and animals and things happening in the soil here that's going to benefit your plants. You're also going to have beneficial things happening in the garden that's going to help your forest as well. So this idea of an edge, yeah.
And that visualizing how big 40 by 40 is, but when the trees grow up, the fruit trees, would you have issues with them shading the veggie crop beds? Or is that big enough that that wouldn't be a problem?
Well, we're planning that out. So like our fruit trees, we usually have one fruit tree, one standard size fruit tree somewhere in the middle of this area. So that's going to grow up to be 20 or 30 feet tall. But these otherwise are very exposed. So we think that's going to provide a good amount of shade that'll reduce moisture loss and also provide a lot of windbreak for growing vegetables because, you know, vegetables need a minimum of like 6 hours, you know, of sunlight, but really much more than 6 hours of sunlight isn't a huge benefit. It's gonna stress them out if they get too dry and you're gonna have to irrigate more. And having these, you know, edges where the wind isn't gonna blow in is gonna really increase our vegetable production eventually.
So if you have like an south-facing slope, would that mean that you probably want to not have quite 40 by 40 if I want to do things, otherwise it would be utilizing too much moisture?
Yeah, if this was on a steeper slope or something, yeah, I would shorten that distance up. It also, for us, like right now, this time of year is when everything, we're getting these, you know, nights that are just starting to get down into the frost. And if this is only, if this is 40 feet between these trees, and you have that canopy effect of the trees, that's gonna create a humid, warm climate in there. It's gonna be less likely to frost than something that's out in the middle of a field that's very exposed, because you're not gonna have quite as much air circulation in between there. If you notice, tonight we're supposed to get a frost, and if you walk out in the morning tomorrow and look at things, you go somewhere near a bunch of big trees, you're probably not gonna see frost on the grass there or on the vegetation right around those trees. But then if you go a little bit farther out into the exposed area out in the field, it's gonna be really frosted. So that's kind of another beneficial effect of this. If you think about the edge here, if you think about having like a pond, you know, maybe this is like a 1 acre pond that has a round edge, or even if you had something with a square or rectangular pond, like a fish pond or something like that, your potential area here where you can grow, say you were going to grow something around the edge of your pond, like blueberries or something that like a wet environment, so you grow them around that edge, you could drastically increase the amount of edge you had and have the same amount of area if you just made this pond a different shape. So you could have 2 to 3 times more edge if you had a 1 acre pond that was this shape rather than round, because you'd have all this additional growing space in this area. So if you were growing fish in the pond, you know, 1 acre pond, you were growing blueberries around here, you could grow the same number of fish, or maybe even more fish, because you'd have more diverse aquatic habitat as well. But you could grow 2 or 3 times as many blueberry shrubs in the same area. This is a picture right here of an herb spiral that's being built. And this is another example of using shapes in your design, different patterns. If you compare planting like a standard garden bed, you know, that might be 3 feet wide and 10 feet long, versus if you make it in the shape of a spiral. This is kind of like the same size bed. It's not a very good drawing of it. But if you basically wrap that bed up into a spiral on top of itself, you can still have the same growing area, growing surface. Let's see if I can draw this a little bit better. Something like that. And take advantage of the vertical space. I don't know if this is a very good, I'm not having much luck drawing it right now, but an herb spiral is a vertical